In 1944, the United States was engaged in a brutal struggle for supremacy against the Japanese in the Pacific. The US had targeted Saipan as a strategic location, being a small part of the Mariana Islands. The island itself was heavily defended by the Japanese, and the US was determined to take it no matter what. If captured, the island would allow for runways which could then launch aircraft at mainland Japan. One soldier's actions on this island would see him given the highest valor award in the United States. In today's video, we look at Thomas Baker and his Medal of Honor on Saipan during World War II. If you like this video and want to see more, hit the subscribe button. It's free and really helps the channel reach more history lovers like you. The Japanese had occupied the island of Saipan since the end of World War I, and they had turned it into a major military base. The US knew that if they could take Saipan, they would be one step closer to victory in the Pacific, but the Japanese were determined to hold the island at all costs. The Battle of Saipan began on June 15, 1944, and it was one of the deadliest battles of the war. Invasion beaches were chosen very carefully and bombarded by the Navy beforehand. However, once the US troops landed, they encountered heavy resistance from the Japanese. Both small arms and artillery was raining down on the troops on the beach. Following the push from the beaches, the US troops moved inland, and one soldier would perform acts of bravery that would make him a legend. Thomas A. Baker was born in 1916 in Troy, New York. He enlisted in the Army in 1940 and was sent to the Pacific Theatre to fight the war against the Japanese. Baker was in Able Company of the 105th Infantry Regiment, 27th Infantry Division. On June 19, Baker and his men were advancing on a Japanese fortified stronghold when they came under heavy fire from automatic weapons and small arms. Baker voluntarily took a bazooka and ran along to within 100 yards of the enemy. Through heavy fire directed at him by the Japanese, he calmly knocked out the strong point with the bazooka and enabled his company to assault a ridge. A few days later, while his company advanced across an open field, flanked with obstructions and places of concealment for the enemy, Baker again alone took up a position in the rear to protect the company against surprise attack. He then ran into two heavily fortified enemy pockets, manned by 2 officers and 10 enlisted men. These had been accidentally bypassed by his company. Without regard for such superior numbers, he unhesitatingly attacked and killed all 12 Japanese defenders. 500 yards ahead, he discovered 6 more Japanese soldiers, who had concealed themselves behind American lines, and subsequently killed each of them. By July 7, the Japanese had been pushed towards the sea on the northern end of the island. With no way to evacuate and seemingly no other option, the Japanese General Saito ordered the largest banzai attack of the war. All able-bodied Japanese soldiers and even civilians were ordered to fix bayonets, draw swords, and anything else they could find, and charge the US positions. Once this attack was over, there would be around 4,300 dead Japanese and nearly 1,000 dead or wounded US troops. At the start of the attack, Baker was part of the defensive line. He continued to fire his rifle at the Japanese charging the line until all of his ammunition was exhausted. He was then forced to use his rifle as a club and fight the Japanese hand to hand. After his rifle was broken, he and some other troops pulled back, but Baker was seriously wounded. A fellow soldier attempted to carry him, but he himself was hit. Baker refused to be moved any further, stating that he preferred to be left to die rather than risk the lives of any more of his friends. After this, he was propped up against a tree, and he asked for a pistol. One of his comrades provided him with an M1911, which had 8 rounds. He then insisted he be left alone and was last seen alive against the tree, pistol in hand, calmly facing towards the enemy. After the banzai charge was over and the US troops eventually retook the ground they'd lost, Baker was found. Sadly, he had died, but remarkably was found in the same position as he was last seen. His pistol's 8-round magazine was completely empty, and amazingly, he was surrounded by 8 dead Japanese soldiers. As a result of his actions on Saipan, Thomas Baker was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. The Battle of Saipan was a turning point in the war, as the US gained control of the island and continued its push towards victory in the Pacific. But the cost was high. The battle lasted for just 25 days, but resulted in the deaths of almost the entire 30,000-strong Japanese garrison. For the Americans, of the 71,000 troops who had landed, almost 3,000 died and over 10,000 were wounded. But the continued advances throughout the Pacific were as a result of the bravery and sacrifices of soldiers just like Thomas Baker. What are your thoughts about Thomas Baker and his actions during World War II? Do you know of another Medal of Honor story you want told? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to expand your knowledge and join the growing Premier History community.